What up, y'all? Thanks for always watching. Please hit the like and subscribe button. A lot of y'all leave comments, which are dope, and I appreciate that. Just go back, double back, hit that like and subscribe so the algorithms can, send this out to everybody else that's into what we into. Peace. What up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of What Words Are Worth. And today I got a person that's like a doctor of rhyme. He knows how to break down your lyrics, show you the intricacies, and even teach others how to write rhymes to be dope. And show you all these multi-syllabic words and just show you the breakdown and the science of what it takes to make a dope rhyme, a dope verse, a dope song. If you want your 16 bars to be tighter, man, this is the guy that'll show you how to do that. He's also written a phenomenal book called Rhymecology, and we're going to talk to him about that, the art of hip hop lyrics. He has other books as well. So, coming to the show, what are words worth today? We got Jeff Walker. Let's go. Welcome, Jeff Walker of Rhymecology. What's up, man?
In the house. What's up, man? Good to be here on this beautiful stage, the new stage, right? Anyway, good to be here, bro. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I have this show because I like to talk to people that are not only creative, but also about the process, in which you're highly into the process of writing a bar, from the structure, the syllables, the sentence, the meaning. You're like really into every aspect of what it is to be a writer or a lyricist, a poet. So you're able to break down things in detail. So my first question was going to ask you, how did you develop the passion for like lyricism?
Man, I was always at a young age, I was a writer. I wrote short stories in, say like middle school probably. And I was like a good writer. I was able to convey emotion. I was able to, I think conveying emotion I was pretty ahead of my time early. And
Right.
then, telling a story. I was pretty good at the short stories. When Easy and NWA dropped, even Raising Hell was my first tape. The kind of Easy and NWA, I got into I just started to really fall in love with hip hop as far as just like the expression that they were saying and the feeling behind it, right?
Right.
They're saying F the police, and I'm like saying F what's happened over here,
Right.
parents got divorced, so I'm like saying F that. And there's, and so there's like a synergy, even though it was they're talking about something else that I wasn't relating to as far as like culturally what was happening to them, but I was in tune with what was happening as a kid going through puberty who had to be moved around the world and the country and never had a solid footing, and then parents get divorced. I'm like resonating with the music. So that's the music. But I was able to live in France in 1995. And I remember playing pickup ball, and someone gave me like a mixed, blank tape with a bunch of mixes on it. And that's what I heard, Fast Life, Cool G and Nas.
Gosh, yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute, hold on. He every on the block you rock like Amadeus. Like, wait, hold on, they're rhyming. My mind started going like, wait, hold on, they're rhyming here, and here, back and forth, internal rhymes, like triple syllable. Like, I mean, what is this? Because I was on the West Coast, so I was coming from, Mac Dre, Mac Mall, Easy E, all that stuff. And so when I heard that 95. I wrote down every word. Hey, yo, I got guns from Italy, smoke trees considerably. And I wrote that down. I was like, there's so much to this. And from that day in 95, I've my passion for rhyming techniques, patterns, and all of that has stayed strong ever since, never went away. So really, I'd say I credit it to that particular song. And then going into Sugar Hill by AZ, and Do or Die by AZ, I think, and then Common Resurrection for the wordplay. So kind of like all around that period, I was just like, there's so much to this. I really gotta, spend my life studying this.
And then when you started studying it, did you also think about did you have like a comparative of like, okay, so now this hip hop thing is a next level of Shakespeare? Because you know, when we're brought up and taught, we're taught about one realm, an aspect of what a poet is.
A poet is.
Did you start being able, were you able to start saying, this is the new realm of that?
No, for me it was the opposite.
Oh,
So I first got into all that I just said, but then I was able to study Dante, who wrote the Divine Comedy, aka Dante's Inferno. And when I studied that, I had such a greater appreciation for that because I had already been not just listening, to hip hop, but studying it, right? So when I saw that Dante wrote every line in iambic pentameter for 14,200 lines over his Divine Comedy, and every line had 11 syllables in it, and he had a rhyme scheme that was called terza rima. I'm like, holy, I'm like, what? I'm like, this is the original MC. And I recently taught a class at UCLA that was saying, was Dante the precursor to the modern day MC, the modern day rapper?
right.
And so it was pretty dope. I got to teach comparing Dante's poetry to, which I could do a whole class on in here, but Dante's poetry to modern day MCs, and drew comparisons that like no one ever thought of. So it was pretty. So I get the question, but mine was more reversed.
Okay. Yeah, I would say with me, it was, I didn't like the name. People ask me about my name, Wordsworth. They
Yeah.
think it's the poet. It's for me, it's the cartoon. So it's so weird sometimes with the origins of where all these things start. As far as like a name, right? Because you mentioned different artists, and we know all these artists had names. Was your name always just straight Jeff Walker? What's your hip hop name? Did you have like, you know,
I've had
everybody had MC such and such, you
yeah, and
know,
I've had,
Wordsworth
I
Steve,
got that. Yeah,
all those things.
that's definitely a sore subject, man. My first like demo CD, I was called the Poetic Prophet,
Okay.
which was yeah, I mean, it was a little bit assuming, and then it became Jaywalker, but then I kept change. It was J Walker, and then I was like, well, J dot Walker, and then I'm like J dot Space Walker, and then I'm like, wait, hold on, J Walker, the poet. I'm like, man, I had too many such things, and so finally, I've just settled on Rhymecology because that's my ethos, that's my business, that's the way I live, and there it's easier to find than J dot Space Walker and all that. So like if you try to look me up, it's literally impossible. So now I'm just anything new is all just Rhymecology. But yeah, I've had a few different name monikers.
So, you know, I've listened to you rap, and a lot of y'all, you know, when you get a chance, go on to Instagram, Rhymecology, Instagram, check out the Instagram, and you'll see him rapping all the time, opening up different records he got, inspiration, you know, teaching everything that he does on there. How would you define what's your writing style? So, me, I've done a song with you, we've done music, and we know each other. So, let me define it first for me. For me, I would say it's definitely always intentional when you're writing. Like you care about that verse.
Mm.
Like you're not gonna just write anything down because you know the science of it. And then also you understand the delivery of saying something. So when we worked on a song like this line, maybe end the line saying it like that or say it like that. How would you define your writing style now that you have become who you are?
Man, intentional is definitely a good way of saying it because you know after you've been writing, whether you're famous or not, but if you have, like me, if you have 50 notebooks filled on your shelf, you've been writing a long time. And so, when you go from the beginning where you're just trying to think of things that might rhyme to then expanding that into multiple syllables to then expanding that into lines across a quatrain or a couplet and different, and then you're like, okay, I'm good at rhyming, which is important, but then you're like, okay, well, what am I going to say with it? And so then that comes into kind of more your ethos as a person, more the psychology of who you are. And so I try to be conceptual and intentional, um, instead of just, rhyming to rhyme. Obviously, like when we did our song, like let's have a concept. When I did a song with your brother Ace, there's a concept on it, right?
Right.
Not really, none of this released yet, but it's happening. And so conceptual, intentional, but also like I feel like, someone who's been through a lot, it's kind of important for you to actually share something that that you've learned, right? Because
Yeah.
so many people haven't had the exact same experiences that we have. And so I try to share some things about uh life, hopefully that it might have some inspiration for somebody. um but also it's like if I look back at like the notebooks, like
Right.
I'm like, okay, like, this one opens up on the first page, it says dirty 30, and the whole rhyme about, okay, I just turned 30. And it was like about where my life is then, and like, I feel like it's always been, the things that are happening in an everyday life, they just seep into the rhymes as well. So I
Right.
would say honest is also part of the writing style, just honest.
And then as you've been writing, right, do you find it kind of like I would say an internal tug of war? Because the reason why I say that is because you're a student of it, right? You're a teacher of it too. You've mastered the craft of it and everything. But we're around different people and spaces that when you're writing or putting together a song, you're like, if I go this far, this group of us will understand it. I know words, I know Mickey, like I know these guys will understand the bars here, but I gotta make sure I'm writing for an audience that's more universal, because you do go to other meetings, right? So like you may be trying to sell an idea or sell something there, and if they listen to your music, if it goes over their head, it kind of brings I guess a barrier. So what's that like when you're writing? I guess the dumbing down versus the lyricist.
uh
For
right, so
and engaging that, Jeff, towards opportunities, because some opportunities listen to you and go, oh, I get it, and then some don't. Yeah.
I mean, it always just, it always just depends on who you're writing for. And
Mhm.
so, like, when I did the song with Mickey Fax,
Right.
like, I had to go into, like, not just a double entendre, but a triple entendre, right? And like, I'm like, he's because I'm writing with him, right?
Right.
Um, and so, but then, like, if I'm going to a school,
Yeah.
I'm not going to, like, drop a triple entendre in front of the principal or someone trying to decide if Rhymecology is a good program to have. I'm going
Yeah.
to come more the inspirational route, um, where it's so that someone can like latch on to, the self-expression through words that kids need, right? Because as we know, like we're getting away from putting words to feelings, and we're more attached to feeling through screens and that. And so if someone comes in and is able to say, look, I can help you put those feelings to in between two lines, in between two blue lines, right? And
Yeah.
then get up and express yourself in front of a crowd, like there's a lot of value in that. But they might not understand, I use Sean's pen to mark the price. Wait, Sean Penn, Mark Price,
Right.
Sean Price. Wait, hold on. That's a triple there, right? I'm not going to say that at the school, but I'll say that on the track with you or Mickey Fax or, you know, anybody like that. So, as with everyone, you gotta pick the right places, to be intentional with the pen.
Yeah, I think it's good to hear you say that, because sometimes um as who we are as artists and lyricists and everything, we could be so competitive, and we so not stuck, but we like to make sure we maintain the integrity of the writing and the pen, but understanding that we also are moving in different business junctures and things that, okay, how do I give this message to this audience? And then as they would say, scaffold them up to this next level of it. And I think sometimes, you know, we're able to kind of through this discussion teach people to go, all right, let me not go in there confusing people. You know, I want to go in there and say, okay, yeah, if you hire me, I can work for this, I can work for this and do that. So that's why I wanted you to kind of elaborate on it, being that you know, you're teaching on all levels. You're able to teach on all levels, but some people don't understand that you're actually you know, modernizing it, modularizing, whatever you need to do. You're fixing it for that level.
And I'm preaching to the choir because you're a master of that. Like you find these lanes that no one else really has found, and then, you know, have created a life around each different lane that you've traveled down. And you know, you know as well as anybody.
Thank you.
One of the things I really admire about you.
Yeah. So if you're out there and you're trying to figure out how to get your art to that level, just understand that there are ways that you may have to bring it down, and then you can ramp it up in different levels. So as far as the writing, are you writing on paper? I heard you got these books. Or, you know, pen, computer, the top, you know, what are we doing?
I mean, hold on, let's just see. I mean, right next to me, all right, I got one. I mean, this is just not prepared, just right next to me. Two, yeah. I mean, 3, 4, like 5, like, oh, this was Sage's. I mean, yeah, look, yeah, so it's still pen and paper. Obviously, when you're out and about and, you know, something inspires you and you gotta, you know, you write it down. You write. I do the phone, but I've like for this last kind of album I'm doing, like I have written on the phone, but when it comes to a certain feeling that I'm trying to convey, like I need to bring it back to the roots. So like the track I did with Master Ace is about pencils, and the whole thing is about conceptualizing and personifying pencils, right? How am I going to write that on a phone? How am I going to write that on a phone? Like, you know, right? And so so those kind of tracks, man, and like they just have to be done with like looking at your, you know, you're looking at your writing and you're looking at, and you're making scratching little notes out and it's just a different feeling. You can feel an energy from what you are writing rather than the soulless screen that you normally type on. So
yeah,
pen and
I've also heard
pad and pen.
I also heard from another artist that the indentations of what you're writing can also tell your mood. So if you're mad, you might be writing harder on the paper. If you just kind of writing, you might. So I found that to be kind of interesting too. And then talking to Pooh, he told me how at one point somebody, I think, gifted him with his lyrics on paper in a frame. So just understanding that that physical aspect, like all those books there are actually now today's art.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I found it interesting that how people are valuing the written work. I was reading I remember I got the Tupac book, the Resurrection book, and then seeing in there they had his writings, and I was amazed at that then. So now I think we are becoming these archives. So like seeing you with all those
Tupac's handwriting, right? Like
right.
and also like, you know, where how you might, some people might you know, Rakim puts the dots at the end of the line, right? He's talked about that, right? And sometimes, you know, you might write in couplets, maybe you write in quatrains, maybe you write a full 16s, right? And maybe does each page land, that's you write 16 on a page, flip it, and then do you start 16 on another, or do you write 16 and then you do half? Like there's a lot of different like ways that you can go about it. And also, like you might see life notes, like you might be writing in here, and then you're like, oh, don't forget to pick up the dog from, you know, blah, blah. And then you look back at that. Oh, damn, I wrote this when I had that dog. She's got, you know, there's also life that's happening on a page that you can't scribble on a phone. So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I spoke to I spoke to Superstition and a couple other artists. They even will put a note on top of the word where the snare drops, because sometimes you might have to revisit a beat and you had to rhyme and you're trying to figure out how you kind of jumped in on the double dutch with it. Kind of you trying to figure out how you jump in between these ropes, right?
That
So
just
you
reminded me, like if I have like something where my voice is going up emotionally, I'll write it, and then I do this like weird line underneath the word, and then I goes like this, like an upwards curve, like going up to the side of the page, and that means like don't forget to raise the voice or the inflection there. So can't, you know what I mean? Can't do that on a screen.
yeah, adding notes to the words that you're writing. So I found it interesting of like hearing everybody's technique with doing it. I haven't written on paper in a while. I'm so used to the computer, but I definitely I'm starting to think about the aspect of writing it down on paper is becoming the new artwork. That's
Mm.
kind of how I'm thinking, right? Like, so let's say me and you do a show, and then if we had to sign an autograph, people view that as artwork too.
Mhm.
But imagine just we're handing out the actual written pages to somebody like, yeah, this is the actual verse.
'Cause we
That's
don't
kind
have
of
the,
crazy,
yeah, no more CD booklets with lyrics. So
right?
you're actually like, here you go.
Yeah, if I went to a show and Coogee Rap is,
Yo,
like
that's actually a crazy idea. Like, just because people, you can make copies of it, but you're like, this is the original one signed by Wordsworth on June 25th, 2025. And like, oh my God, yeah, that's a great idea.
yeah. Imagine like I said, I'm a Coogee Rap fan. Coogee Rap gave me
A
just
one of
anything from
one,
Wanted Dead Alive, anything from that album. That's my favorite Coogee Rap album. But if he gave me,
Streets of New
anything
York,
New
like
York,
the original, like maybe he wrote it on the train or something, and he's got a little note over here, something about being on the train. Oh man,
Dive Talk, anything on that, anything from any Coogee Rap albums, I would just be like, yo, this is kind of crazy. This is actual verse. So that's why I'm kind of thinking about just trying to figure out other ways. Because even though I do it digitally, I'm just saying though now it's more so what can we do to make it more artistic because it's already that like we're doing galleries and we're
something
doing
that's,
a lot of this
but it's
stuff.
also something that's warmer, right? Where the world's cold right now, like the world is cold, right? And everything is there's a lot of soulless activities happening. If you're giving someone a piece of paper or getting a paper from one of your favorite artists, that's warm, that's analog,
Right.
that's a connection, right? If someone was a fan of me and they were, like connecting with, different rhyme patterns that we had here, or seeing the notes that were scribbled and scratched out, right? Like, oh,
Right.
why did I take out that line and then write over it with that line? That'd be interesting if someone was a fan, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, this is why you are always doing things. You're ahead of the time, man.
Just talking to people, man, like talking to you and talking to people, it just gives me ideas and way. Also, we're in these spaces of what's the next part of it, right? You're in classrooms, I'm in classrooms, and we're in these spaces of hip hop being so valuable. And we're up here like, okay, what's the value of it audio wise? We know when people listen to it, but now it's becoming more of a visual thing, which that's why you got books or so it just trying to think of these other lanes in which how do we kind of I guess contribute to where the art is going further on. So yeah, that was dope just to discuss that. Kind of it got me thinking though, because so after we get off here, I'll probably say some things, I got some other ideas.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, just the more connections we can have, the better. I mean, there's a reason why vinyl has shot back up in the popularity, because the majority of people we're doing this, and so when you get that, like, oh, you're connecting again with someone, right? And it's
yeah,
not just us that were collected before. It's new people are looking for connections, and so you know what I mean? Something handwritten. Anyway, we got you. Got
yeah.
you.
So chorus or verse first when you're creating a song, what do you typically go with, or does it matter?
Always for verse. I'm not a chorus guy. I always do verse. Um, and then yeah, try to get someone to help me on a chorus. I'm not the hook maker. My wife is a really good singer.
Yeah.
She's toured the world, etc. I'm like, hey, what you got for this one? So yeah, I verse is always for me. Yeah, and get a concept, do a couplet, do a quatrain, and then go from there.
And then how long does it take for you to the verse or a song?
Honestly, it doesn't take that long anymore to write the verse. So if it's 16 or it's 32, you know what I mean? Like 16 probably could be done in 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes or something. Maybe 30, probably like I could probably knock it out 30 minutes. But to make the song is different because I'll write it, and then when you put on when you get in there, and then I'm like, too many syllables. Like and then for me making the song takes like 5 times as long as writing the verse. Um, just trying to find the right flow, the right cadence, the right thing. And then I think I'll have it and I'll send it to someone. They'd be like, you might, I think you could do better. Go back, do it again. Or, like, and then sometimes you do it with a buzz, and then sometimes you compare to how that sounded sober. Sometimes that's like there's a lot of different ways that I try to feel that out. But the writing of the verse, that comes pretty easily at this point, to be honest.
And then how are you gauging the time though, right? So are you writing it within that time frame because it's your song versus you having to do a feature or a business deal or something that needs the verse in a couple of weeks? Like, do you take longer to do it because you have that time period and grace and you're trying to make it a better product? Because I know opportunities, I think a lot of time can kind of gauge what you have to do, right? With your own stuff, you could kind of do it when you got to, but if you're doing something, let's say for uh, Nike or something like that, do you feel like there's a different priority level to the way that you do it?
No, well, yes. I mean, if you're doing some like a paid something like that, like I mean, personally, I'm gonna be more like I'm gonna be like I got to get this done no matter what. And of course, when it's your own project, you're like, I can sit on it, but I think what a great writer can do though is step into the shoes of who he's writing for, of course, right? I'm sure, you're such a great writer. I'm sure you've ghost written for a lot of people, but you're not writing from Vincent's, Wordsworth's point of view. You're writing from you've got to step into their shoes. If you're writing from Nike, you've got to realize like, okay, what voice do they want? Do they want the guy running the marathon, or do they want the guy playing 3-on-3 on the blacktop? What voice do they want? Right. And so, you got to be able to be outside of yourself and tap into the voice, the link, the dialect, the phraseology, terminology, all that they are feeling like they need. So but I think if you're a great writer, you can do that.
Yeah, I think it's I found that um a lot of times as a writer, when you're rapping and you're coming up and you're doing your thing, you kind of gauge having things done based on when studios booked, right? Like,
Mm.
hey, studios booked this time, gotta have this verse done, or when we got studio, and then as time goes on, then you kind of have a little bit more flexibility because maybe your boys start owning the studio, you have your own setup, and then I think at some point you switch your mind to understanding you're a business person now. Now you're business with it, that your time frames they can change. If you're requested to have something tomorrow,
Yeah.
you'll have it tomorrow. Even if you're a person that typically needs longer to write, when you start understanding the mechanics of being a writer, um, I always wrestle with that idea though, sometimes on a basis of it's so weird. So Jeff, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you're writing that rhyme in 45 minutes versus writing that rhyme with 2 days,
Yeah.
is it going to be the same rhyme? You know, you know what I'm saying? Because you can write it faster.
I know, and yeah, and you know
Wow,
what? All right, so full disclosure, I'm working on a verse for one of my favorite MCs right now.
right.
He doesn't know it yet, but I've noticed that this verse, I'm like, okay, I really got to get there's so many different things I got to do with this one. I've been writing this verse for a few days now, right? As
Right.
opposed to, just like, okay, here's this couplet. Let me safety pin's one of my favorite terms, where you get the last rhyme of the last rhyme of the last line, and then you safety pin it to the beginning of the next line. Anyway, so like you might do a couplet, you might do a quatrain, you might do a 16, and I think it's sadly it might be a little bit easier to settle on your own rather than like what I'm doing for this person. So I think you're
Right.
right, actually. It Man, I wrote this thing for Will I Am once.
Mhm.
um and it was a whole song. Well, actually, it was more like a poem, but it was a verse where every line had the acronym of race, right?
Okay.
So it's a 4-syllable acronym, but rhyming as well,
Right.
right? And so that took days, because I had a list of words that started with R on this page, and that took a while to write. Maybe 100 different things started with R, 100 things started with A, 100
Yeah.
things started with C and E. And so
Yep.
then, like, the puzzle was putting them together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ruining America's creative energy. Like, that's okay. But now you got to rhyme creative energy like that. Like, yo, that come on. Like, you're not going to be, I'm not going to be doing that for my own. But when you're trying to impress someone like Will I Am or whatever, then you
Right.
do. And it did work, by the way, because we created a video about it. Sadly, he never released it. I thought the dreams were all going to come true that day. Well, he had 100 kids come in. They were all reciting this poem. Actually, that was the second one. I did one called NRA for him. I did race, and then I did NRA because, in the same way. You know
Right.
what I mean? We're calling, but they never really answer. Negligent, rude assholes killing kids like they were cancer, right? And so, like, NRA in every line is an
Yeah.
acronym. And so we created this video, had 100 kids come in, man, and then they never released it. I was just like, oh man.
Yeah. So hopefully he'll release that down the line, because that's the one thing I've learned about doing art today. Like, it's more timeless, I think, for me. Like, I think like you could do something like that type of song, he could release it now and it can still get that attention.
Something like that. It's not it's not it's not a trend. It's not
Right.
like what's hot in the moment. It's poetry with literary techniques and devices that will last forever. So that is actually true, right? And that's kind of, that's why I think, the songs that we did, and like they, they didn't need to be released when we did them a couple years ago, because
Right.
concept, the lyricality, the flow, that can be now, or it can be, in 10 years, and I think it'll still feel good. So
Yeah, that's
that's
why I
definitely a
love
good point.
concepts. That's why concepts are always dope if you can come up with some good ones, because that you can just get in a call with somebody and be like, check the song out. And don't have to say the year, don't have to, if it relates to it.
Mm,
So
yeah.
what's it like as far as you like writing in the studio or at home?
Uh, I write everywhere. Car, studio, home, baseball fields, watching my son play baseball. It doesn't matter. It's always something's always being written. And but like I said before, the funny thing is I'll think it's working to the beat when I'm listening to it. Then when I
Right.
go in the studio, because of probably different energies around, or different internal energies, like, it doesn't always sound like I pictured it. So
Right.
then I get to the studio, and then sometimes I have to rewrite it. Like at Pendulum, we run I co-own a school called Pendulum Inc., which is, we're basically helping people become better writers, better MCs, understand their mental health and business. But like every guest that we've had, from Method Man to Inspector Deck to Sky Zoo to Fonte to Absol to, we had Mick Jenkins last night. Like every guest that we've had, like so often they say that they kind of scat to the beat first, right?
Yeah.
So I come from writing a verse and then fitting it into the beat, and I don't think that's worked as well for me. I think what I've learned from them is really like go in and like just kind of you scat to it and you kind of like find that, and then you plug in the words, which for a wordsmith and a lyricist, for me it was like always the other way. But then, like I said, I'll write the 16, and then when I get in there, I'm like, you know what? I need to like feel it more, because you're not feeling how it's going to go as well until you actually are in there, and your energy and voice is projecting and maybe something that might be a little different than you wrote. So, long story short, I write everywhere, but then often when I get in the studio, I kind of scratch it out and rewrite on top of it.
Yeah, I learned a lot about like the flows, listening to like KRS-One was one of the first people that I really heard like do different flows on the beat. So like what's beef? Beef. Da 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 like
Then this
change up.
poisonous product cease. This is another
Yeah,
surface and
you
nice.
know,
You can
right,
believe it or you can doubt
right.
it.
And then on Love Gonna Get You, I'm in junior high with the B plus. But the way he's just
End of the
every
day, I don't hit the
and
arcade.
one of my favorite songs ever, and one of my favorite lines is, "I go upstairs, hug my brother, kiss my sister, and punch my brother." I thought that was so ill. Like that line, that one line is so ill. It's three
Not
different
because
things.
Punch is your brother, right? But anyway, all right.
But I thought it was so ill just seeing that. But KRS-One has so many flows where each beat is different. And then another person, as I got older and just listening, Buster is another person that you would always hear the different. So then that trained me into that mindset as well of I'm more into the scat vibe of it too, like hearing the beat, then I'm kind of getting into that seance of okay, where I'm going with it, and doing that as well. But I just think about the moments of hearing different people that made me say, okay, I got to do that. And then adding it to my tool belt, to my tool shed to kind of like, get around a little bit differently. So, what's the atmosphere in the studio for you or writing anytime? So, are you in the morning, getting up in the morning, or you afternoon, night, got to be no lights, people in the studio? A lot of people used to be coming up, studio used to be packed, everybody's in there. And then now, it's kind of like some
It's
people.
very insular now. Very insular now. Like,
Right.
and we were talking about that with Mick Jenkins last night. Like, what happened to the posse cut? And then I said, what's happened to groups? Being someone, who literally has been on many posse cuts and been in many groups, like what has happened to that? Like everything is like you're pretty much feels like a solo artist now. And then to top it off, what's happened to posse cuts that actually had something to say instead of just trying to outdo each other? Are you guys like to be? I mean, you just did, what was that? Live from the Blue Note? Was that the track?
Yeah.
Yeah. And first of all, that was like probably one of my favorite verses the entire year. Your particular verse. Oh my God, that was so impressive. But I actually want to ask you that because we were talking about it last night. Like, obviously we're not going to have self-destruction again. We're all in the same gang again. And I don't know why I have to say obviously, but it feels like we're very far away from that. At least though, like you're doing some like posse cuts, but there's not many of those, right? Like, even the Eastern Conference All-Stars there, the Pete Rock with the Griselda, with the Elzai, like, is that a posse cut? Like, what's your take on that? Like about posse cuts and groups being, as someone who's been, obviously EMC, you've had a partner and, that you worked with for many years. Like, what's your take on that now? Because I actually just want to know.
I think today we're more solo with it because the money has gotten so low in music. So, it's like I can produce more. So the quantity and the quality, if you can maintain that solo, and dealing with streams doesn't pay that much, and then you got to get a show. The options to get money as a big group isn't there as much as it used to be, unless you kind of forming that Voltron of like mega or super groups. But at the end of the day, when you really start thinking about the money aspect of it, it's really not much money in it unless you're already making a lot of money by yourself. So used to be a lot of touring overseas, right, for like underground groups, and then that shut down a lot because the sponsors in the world became more global through the internet. That the big concerts that used to have a lot of us artists like performing in front of 30, 50,000. Now those same exact audiences will have a Rick Ross there, or a big name artist, because the sponsors will want to see a return on investment from their money, and they want to use the commercial acts to help with that. So it's gotten to a point that financially and the money isn't there to do these big groups unless you already are going to make money without being in the big group. So I enjoy doing, I look at it also as like, I love just doing music in general. So I'll do collab albums and I love doing it. But I think you also have to understand if what your audience is when doing your music. So as far as doing the big groups, I don't think it's really going to be done that much unless the big group artists already understand that it's going to recoup. Nobody really wants to do the group unless it's going to recoup. That's really where we are, because people are solo probably trying to figure out how to recoup. So to be in a group, it's like, man, I can do this by myself. And the streams don't pay much. This doesn't pay much. Touring is there, but it's not big like that. You don't really have independent artists that's coming through your town and city. Just like, yo, such and such is it. That's kind of shut down.
But with like EMC, did you make more money from touring or from record sales?
I would say from the touring aspect. We made money from the touring aspect. We did recoup on the albums though, but at the end of the day, the recoup, that splits up, right? When you're touring, you're making a lot more because of the aspect of we have merch, and then each of us are selling the solo stuff. So even though we're EMC,
Yeah.
I'm selling my album, my solo album. I literally was selling out. I was selling I had at one point.
Right. You're double dipping. And is the
Yeah,
Angry Merch Guide selling your stuff and everyone
yeah,
else's too at the
yeah.
same time?
He sells everybody's stuff. He sells everybody's stuff. And what was dope, I remember when like first started going over there too, I had Fat Beats actually have to send a case of CDs ahead at a hotel. I sold out that money. So that aspect on top of that, it just would help. But at the end of the day, us being together but selling solo stuff also helped to propel us to this point now where you gotta build up your own thing.
Yeah.
So that's why I always salute Ace and putting that whole thing together, because that basically raised the value of who I am to help have that sustainability. So yeah, but doing a solo today, you kind of have to for the most part. I was talking to Kev Brown the other day. What's dope working with Stu Bangers is Stu is always just like, yo, let's do it. Do another let's drop it. The overthinking has stopped with me. Like, I don't even overthink no more with doing music like that, because you're seeing artists put out so many projects back to back, and you realize that, people just want to hear some dope joints. They don't need you to go into too much overthinking. And a lot of times, we came up in a school of not overthinking, but that's how it was. You think of the rollout. How much is this? The videos. I gotta, can we get this promoted here? We're doing that. Now it's really just, make some dope stuff and hit the button. That's really what it is, man.
What last question tonight? Was EMC one of the last groups like Coster Rascas's kids, and there's a couple, but like
yeah,
yeah,
Slaughterhouse,
yeah,
Slaughterhouse, us, the Costa Contra, they're dope. But those groups are are people that kind of are like near each other, probably live together, like live near each other and live in the same region.
Yeah.
So it's not that difficult. And then probably each of them are doing solo albums. I would assume each of them are gonna have a solo project at some point because it's just is what it is in this climate of music. It's just not
It's
sustainable.
crazy. Like you thought of like 3, and then if I'm like, tell me groups from '90, you're like PEBD,
Yeah.
NW, like like you know, it's just anyway. So I've been like kind of tripping off that a little bit lately, and so that it was. I just wanted to ask your take.
Yeah.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
So in regards to what time frame do you like to create? Is it night, morning?
Um, man, honestly, writing. I like writing in the morning.
Okay.
Um, actually, no, that's a lie, man. Writing just whenever, when any moment, any moment. I love writing at any moment. To be honest, I think recording wise is usually. I have kids, man. So when the when the kids go to usually if the kids go to bed, and then I have energy. But I like waking up and throwing on the headphones. But then man, it's hard. It's hard. I don't even know when I do it. I think I do it more at night as far as recording, but writing
Right.
is like a evergreen process.
And then are you writing to the beat or you have the rhymes prepared? I heard earlier you said you typically may write and then put it to the beat. What's your
I mean,
preference to it though? If you rather have the beat and then go from there?
so you got to understand, when I started performing actual on stage, I was doing more like slam poetry. Like I had a demo back in the day called hip hop poetry, where the P was used on the end of the hop and poetry. So like I was everything I did was always like we talk about like the rhyme schemes and the wordplay and this and that, but
Right.
I was more performance wise a poet, right? A slam poet, like Sage started off
Yeah,
doing that
yeah,
as
yeah.
well. So like we're kind of coming from the back end as far as like writing the verse that you can perform on stage and then fitting it into a beat. So I've realized that doesn't work as well if you're trying to MC. So I now like to write pieces that are spoken word
Right.
straight. Like you'll see on my IG sometimes I'll just like turn on the mic and like perform that way. But then I gotta write a little differently. You know what I mean? When there's a beat involved. So I now have kind of like it goes both ways, kind of like so like in my classes, like we always write. And so in my rhymecology classes, like
Hmm.
we'll study an artist, right? Let's say we're studying your Test of Time song, right? And like we will study that, break it down, and then by the end of the class, I'm like, all right, if you were writing a piece to a loved one and you're pretending that you're 60 years old, 80 years old, like how would you write it? And then we will write it, and then we'll perform it in class. So
Right.
a lot of times we're writing a cappella, performing a cappella, and then I'm like, man, you could turn that into a song. And then but then when you have the beat, you're going to probably massage what you wrote to perform a cappella and massage it and then like rearrange it a little bit to fit a beat.
Right.
I think there's yeah.
So then what's your beat picking process like for you? Are you you know, looking for things that you say, okay, this has a theme to it. I can get with this. Because a lot of times you get beats and sometimes you might like the beat, but it's not for you. So how are you picking your beats?
And I'm at this point I'm pretty lucky because my brother Kano, who I feel like we've connected with him before.
Yeah, yeah.
He's pretty much like a master of what he does. And I'll be like, look, I got to make a song about baseball for the kids' little league team, or he'll just be like, send me something, and I can emulate it. Like he's
Right.
like that guy. He's like whatever beat whatever you want to make, like I can make it. So I'm pretty lucky in that stage because I'm using him. Like we're co-creating a lot together, I would say. But he's just that guy. Like he can do that. And so whatever he gives me, like I rock with, because he knows kind of like my cadence. He knows I'm gonna be more on the boom bap style, maybe a little jazzy sample, maybe a little soulful, this or that. But he's never gonna give me something trap, because to be honest, I probably couldn't even kick it the way I was, the way he would want me to.
All right. And then when you're performing it, are you straight through? So if somebody tells you to do the punching, would you be like, nah, I have to get it one shot?
Look, if I'm like, in a studio with an engineer sitting there and he's a master at doing what he does, then the punching is fine. But often if you're in the home studio, like I like going straight through, because I notice, just sometimes it's hard to match the exact inflection you had or the exact emotion you had, in this take. And sometimes you do it and then you do it the next morning, your voice is a little different. So I like to go straight through, because I kind of get a certain, there's a certain kind of emotion that's coming with each take. Right. And also I don't like punching myself. Like I said, in a studio, someone's doing that, that's fine for the punching. But if I'm doing it on my own, I really like to go straight through, and more often than not, doing it in the home studio now anyway.
And then what's the revision process like when you've been writing? So I've worked with you, so I remember doing the song. What's dope is you didn't mind like coaching, like the whole situation. Like, yo, maybe if you in that line here, then I'll come in with this line here. I thought that was dope, because I don't mind that. And some people would mind suggestions. I love suggestions, because it makes me go like, I love anything that's gonna fill my mind with alternatives of how to think. So as far as so I've seen you do it as far as like revising on the basis of hearing the song, then we go back and may change something. What it's like when you're writing the rhyme, a lot of cross outs, a lot of it is what it is.
I'd say that the cross outs usually, the revision is important, because as writers, like we're pretty confident usually in what we write.
Right.
But when you come back at it a day or two later, you're like, oh, maybe I could have had another internal in there. As we say in Pendulum, we call it shadow boxing. When that's, we could have, I could have had we could have got, you know what I mean? Like, so I think that revising is important. And I think now at the stage where you can record a lot at home and stuff, like you're not on the clock as much. I remember, being in the studios and I'm like, man, how much have I been paying for this hour? I'm like, damn it. Like, I'm not going to have time to revise, So I think now though, it's essential for the revisions. I think it's really essential. And as far as like what we did, like, it started off when we had a phone call.
Right.
And like, I think, Kano made that beat for us. And we were just kind of like listening, and you're like, I kind of have this feeling of like you were seeing something. You're like, I kind of see this, it's kind of like this rainy thing at a cafe and thing. And then we were like, okay, you play this person, I play this person. So we already had that like back and forth discussion, which is already more organic than, let me give you some money for a 16, whatever you give me, I'll just put in. Like we already had that organic relationship as far as like kind of bouncing things back and forth. So that's why I felt like I was like, oh, maybe I could, throw this idea out to him, and you were receptive to it because we already had laid that groundwork.
I think it, like the song we have with the cafe and everything, it's like it's dope on the basis of it's timeless. That's the main thing that when we were doing like even coming up with thinking of doing a song, my mindset was always like, all right, let's do something, but whatever we do, it has to have that kind of some idea that it just works. No matter when you play it, you can envision it. It could be in a movie. It can just, it's always going to be relevant. So as far as like with the storytelling aspect of it, how important is it for you when you're writing to make sure that it's a story, but not the one thing that I notice about when you're writing and rhyming is that you have a way to have clarity. You're not going to speed up. Your pacing is good. So it's like straightforward that I get it. I understand what you're saying. And it seems like you're very mindful of pacing of what you're saying. You're very mindful of pacing. So you won't say a rhyme and go super fast. Or if you are referring to a rhyme that you know of that has a certain speed, you're actually able to teach it at a level that people can grasp each part of it and then they can hear it differently. So yeah, so how important is the pacing and the details it is for you with the storytelling?
Well, I think that to me, storytelling is crucial in the micro and the macro. So, so if we're talking about our song Cafe, like there's storytelling within the storytelling. Like the
Right,
song itself is a story, but then my story as, the customer at the cafe, I'm telling a story about, what happened with this individual's life. And so there's like a story within the story, right? Then the macro is it's going to be on this album where the next song is going to be, or the song before it's going to be a song I did with Napoleon the Legend, um, where we're talking about Paris, because I lived in Paris for a year. He was from Paris. And so
dope.
we're talking about Paris. What's famous in Paris? Cafes. So then there's like that kind of story. So we're going to go, and then like the track, so that like the track before that's going to be this track I did with Jilly Moon, which is actually out called I Need a Vacation. So we're going to go from I Need a Vacation to then Paris to then the cafe in Paris while on vacation. So like that's the rap nerd stuff that, you know what I mean? Like, with EMC, you guys literally were the masters of that. But, without trying to explain it too well and have a bunch of skits, I'm just going to be like,
Right.
that's where, going back to that earlier question where there's no dumbing down of it or trying to explain it. It's like, if you don't get that I went from a vacation to Paris to a cafe, then you're just not going to get it. But hopefully one or two people out of 10 might understand that. And if you know me, I love, the EMC Ace type albums where there's a story going. So you might catch on that, I'm doing that, but not spoon feeding it.
Yeah, what I also like about the song we have, which is always my intent when writing, and then it was dope working on the song with you, was the fact that I'm always trying to make sure whatever is being written can be read without the beat. So it's just dope if once you got the song out and everything's there, right? Man, you can give a student your part and give a student my part, and they're reading it back and forth, and
Mhm.
seeing that in a class or in just in general, watching two people read that dialogue back and forth, that is just like, wow. I think that's the beauty of us doing that song together. Is for me, it's not the music part, honestly. A lot. That's
Yeah.
why I love the writing aspect so much, because I'm a lot of times and nowadays with us putting out books, there's no music there a lot, right? It's really people are able to say the power in the word. So that's where my excitement is of doing the song we did with the back and forth and everything. Just seeing two people read that would be extraordinary.
That
That's what blows my mind.
that even reminds me, I think in my early rhymecology classes at Pendulum, I was wait, where was I doing this? Well, I do a lot of one-on-one coaching with people at transformative rhyme coaching, which means basically I'm helping people break through. So I'm a mental health specialist, right? So I have a master's degree. I work with people one-on-one. And so a lot of times, I'm working with people on breaking through blockages and barriers, trauma and drama that, has been holding them back as a person, artist. Yeah, but really as a person. So I'm trying to think of when I was doing this, but I was having people read lyrics, just like you're saying, speak the lyrics, right? Reading and speaking the lyrics of a famous verse where someone might have been vulnerable on the page, right? Or someone might have taken to the pen and the pad to write about trauma and drama. But we hear it as music. We hear it as flow. We hear it as something we can listen to mindlessly. But when you're like, when you're like looking at right here, the first line, sometimes I feel I let you down, gave you a happy meal with extra frowns, used to be a Big Mac, but now I'm passing out to but I'm passing out to Netflix now. Like sometimes I feel I let you down. Like when you're reading that, like as like spoken word, when you're reading that, just like you're saying, is off the page, like that's different than sometimes I feel like I let, you know what I mean? And you're like, people get lost in the cadence, they get lost in the beat, right? The dumb are mostly intrigued by the drums. Like sometimes, like you get so lost in the beat, sometimes you get so lost in the music, you miss, the pain that people were transferring to the page that they had to get out. And so going back to that, like going back to like even if you type up someone's lyrics from a famous verse, print them out. That's what I used to do when I worked in the community, Long Beach and Compton. For 15 years, I would go and I'd work with kids, and I would always see, like, I'm like, do you know what they're saying? They're like, no, I just like the beat. And then I would like print it up, and I'd be like, let's read this. And like, it's a different feeling, man. Cause
even when you just read that, that's what I love about the writing aspect. What you just read, if that was in somebody else's hands, needing to talk to their parent or friend or loved one, it works. Like that, somebody that doesn't understand how to communicate on their own, you can say, oh, okay, I heard what you said. Read them this. And that would explain it, the power of it. So, I think that's what's extraordinary.
I mean, I just like look at, like, these are things I do in class, but it's like words I wish I told myself is it's okay to focus on golden wealth. You know what I mean? Like when you say it, like, words I wish I told myself, it's okay to focus on golden wealth, right? Like you can put the emphasis on that. Like you're talking to your younger self, like it's okay to try to be successful and not just be this like, ultra wordy, tricky wordsmith. You know what I mean? Like it's actually okay to focus on gold and wealth. When it comes to the mic, it's better to be bold than stealth, right? It's better to be bold than just like that's what this is like something I was literally writing myself in one of my exercises from like last week. I'm like talking to my younger self saying, you know what I mean? It's okay to try to, do this and that, and not just always be hidden, the closet MC as I was for many years.
So speaking of that, so what do you do when you have a creative block, or what would you suggest for somebody else? Or do you even get creative blocks?
No, I don't get creative blocks because I can rhyme, right? And I'm saying that like because where people for me, when I work with people who are having quote writer's block, I say let's write about this writer's block.
Right.
Okay. So do you know how to rhyme? Do you know what rhymes with writer's block? I wish, I hope this shit might just stop. Okay. So you know how to rhyme with writer's block in a multisyllabic phrase that is now, okay. So you wish that it might just stop. And what would happen if it might just stop? Well, then I pull myself out of this thing that I'm in. Right. And then okay, what's this thing that you're in, where I'm always struggling to, win, but it's a sin and wait, hold on. So I feel like people get stuck on a concept more than they do the actual writing. And so what I try to work with people on is let's write about what the block is, because you can still rhyme, right? You could write, Elzai had a song where he was stuck on the writer's block, right? And I even said that in a verse just like last week, where I'm doing this song where I'm where a concept about trying to find a concept. So the whole concept is, damn, I need a concept. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I mentioned the first line was something about, being on a writer stuck on the block. You know what I mean? But my point is, I feel like I don't really get a creative block because when I turn on the tap, like there's like life can block me from turning on the tap because I got to go to the grocery store. I got to do, pick up this and that. But when the tap turns on, 10,000 hours in, as so many of us are, and probably every person on your podcast, 10,000 to 20,000 hours in, like it's going to flow. And so I love working with people, though, who think that they're having a block. And then, you just give them a concept, you give them a prompt, right? And it's going to flow. It's going to flow because you know how to rhyme. Like everyone knows how to rhyme. And so, just you're talking yourself out of creating something because the block that you think you have. But give them a prompt and even have them write about even the frustration of, man, my pen used to flow like this, you know what I mean, but
Right.
now I'm stuck. And so those prompts can lead to interesting verses.
So I want you to break down Pendulum Inc., right? So School of Lyricism, right? So what's the difference between Rhymecology and Pendulum Inc., or how have they merged? Because you have a following from Rhymecology, and then you have following from Pendulum Inc., and then you have the merger. And then I've also seen you teach Rhymecology courses. So
Yeah. So so Rhymecology helps people express, discover, and recreate their stories through
nice.
hip hop lyrics, right? So it's that's my mission statement. That's what I've been doing for 15 years, whether working with youth in the streets and communities, whether working with clients one-on-one to help them transform their understand their past, so I can be more present with them to create a better future. That's what I do one-on-one. So I've been doing that and going to workshops, going to songwriting conferences, teaching people like you, teaching people like Mickey, explaining to songwriters how what these lyrical techniques that MCs use are, because they have a much different sense of writing songs. So I'm always been like a bridge as far as the songwriting. So Rhymecology has been doing that for a while.
For sure.
When I left my mental health agency, I was like, look, I'm going to give this a year, just focus on Rhymecology, see what happens. Around the same time, Mickey Fax came to do one of my workshops, like you did one of my workshops, and where we talked to a select group of really open-minded, like lyrical MCs who love people who have really dope pens like you. So I was kind of like putting people together like that. And then Mickey said, look, why don't we should just make a school of this, right? So we said that in like January 2022, and by March we had a full-fledged school with a textbook, and so Rhymecology then became a part of that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, look, I can help. I can help teach the rhyming, and I can help. What is this? Yeah. I'm like, look, I got this. Like the art of hip hop lyrics, I can teach this. You know what I mean? Look at this. Boom, boom. And then Mickey's like, I think I'm pretty good on that. He's like, he's like, me and Chilla Jones were pretty good on that. Why don't you just pull up and do your mental health? So now every week for the last 3 years, I'm running Rhymecology in Pendulum Inc., which means all the students of Pendulum Inc. get to come to 90 minutes. It used to be over 3 hours. I used to go crazy with it, but 90 minutes now to 90 minutes to maybe 2 hours max, where we number one is we have group interactions. I'm breaking down usually a song and then giving them a prompt to write on something that they normally might not write on, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like the ace joint, when I look in the mirror, I don't know who I be, I don't know who I see. Am I even proving it all? Because I swear I can't tell, am I moving at all? I swear I can't tell if my life is improving at all. That all happened from him saying he was looking in the mirror. So I'm like, so I'll be like, pause the class, go look in the mirror, for 2 minutes. What do you see? What do you feel? what are you looking at in the future? What are you feeling from the past? Who are you looking like? And then come back. Let's write this verse. Let's write a verse about what you felt in the mirror. Like, what were you looking in the future, or were you looking in the past? Were you present? What were you noticing about your eyes? So like, we'll study a great verse like that, and then I'll give someone a chance to write about something different. Or like, Sci-Hi had a verse where he was rapping from inside his mother's womb, talking about what she was going through and what he was feeling inside of the womb. And then when he came, I'm like, what would you tell your mother if you were inside of the womb? What suggestions what are you feeling? You know what I mean? Like, just different type of stuff. And people are they're getting at Pendulum Inc. the advanced lyricism, like advanced, like we got 50, 75 different techniques, learning about scheming from Chilla Jones, learning about doing a punchline that works this way as well as this way without flipping any syllables or words, right? Reverse punchlines. That's the craziness that they do. And then they come to me to get your mind right, to get to align your soul with your writing, and to write about the things that you don't think you should or could. That's what you get at the Rhymecology sessions within Pendulum Inc. And then we work outside together a lot.
The books you have, right? I have several of the books and everything. Can you explain each book and what the meaning is behind each book you have? Like, we know the Rhymecology one, so that breaks down kind of the strategic way of putting together the words and rhymes, hip hop lyrics. And then I like the fact that you also write with the mental health aspect, and then the other books.
Yeah. So that book you're talking about was probably the original one, the Art of Hip Hop Lyrics. And, there's different things in here, like the T-graph technique, which is like, basically, I'll just show you. It's like different ways you're coming up with different multis that you might not think of normally. Because if I'm like, yo, what rhymes with Red Room? You're going to have like your first 5 that you're going to think of. And then you're going to go with one of the first 5. But if you have like 15 of them written down, and you're stretching yourself to think of things that rhyme with red and things that rhyme with room, and then put them together, you might think of that one gem that you wouldn't have if you were just going off top, basically. Right. So there's a lot of different like techniques in here, as far as like, multiing, of course, different techniques, different patterns. You know what I mean? There's different patterns we're breaking down in here. Are you going A, B, C, B? That's like the pop way. Are you going, A, B, B, C, B, B, D, C? You know what I mean? So a lot of stuff like that in there. That's it's very good, especially, for someone who might not have been writing that long, but also someone who might want to get outside of their normal rhyming box. Like, it just gives you some, like, give you a couple more tools in the belt. And then as far as your expression, as far as it says right here, breaking through with bars, express, discover, recreate your story. This is really, I think this is a very unique book as far as mental health goes, because there's some books that talk about like hip hop healing and hip hop therapy, but it's kind of like more on a scientific, case study. This here, we break down. Every verse breaks down a legendary song and then gives you a prompt to write about. You know what I mean? So, like I just said, the Sci-Hi, the belly of the beast, right? We write about that in here. Sa Rock and self-worth. Like, every song is breaking down someone that you respect, their verse a little bit, and then giving you a prompt to heal, giving you a prompt to heal through hip hop. And that's what breaking through with bars is. You can break generational cycles. You can, be more present in the moment. You can secure self-worth. You can create mindful meditations, regain your superhero power, all through rhymes. And I think that's the stage where people are at, because, therapy is crazy expensive now to go sit on the leather couch. But you can get a lot of like therapeutic techniques through hip hop and through this book. So that's kind of like the two aspects of Rhymecology. And I'm pretty proud of the breaking through with bars, because I think it's a unique lane that not many people have gone through, where you're incorporating the lyricism and the hip hop history, but also providing you a lane to heal.
Jeff, I appreciate you being here. Make sure y'all support Rhymecology, Pendulum Inc., anything that you need. So give the social media. So give how, you know, people get in touch with you, Instagram and everything.
Yeah, Rhymecology is the way to do it on Instagram. It's just at Rhymecology. And I have YouTube at Rhymecology, and I got a website, rhymecology.com. So it's all consistent with that. I haven't really got into the TikTok, Twitter world. I don't know why, but those three for sure. There's a lot of Rhymecology on there. A lot of breaking down, you know, legendary songs and albums, breakdown wise. And I'm starting a video series now where it's going to be the hip hop mental health minute. So once a week, I'm going to drop a video that's just 1 minute breaking down a song, hip hop mental health, and, you know, help giving people that option to learn, you know, about some of these songs they might not know about from hip hop history, where actually were super therapeutic. So that's the series that I'm beginning right now.
Well, everybody, make sure you like, subscribe, comment down below. Go check out Rhymecology, check out the YouTube, subscribe, like, comment below, and everything on there. And like I always say, what are your words worth? Peace, y'all.
Long live lyricism.
Yeah. What up, y'all? Thanks for always watching. Please hit the like and subscribe button. A lot of y'all leave comments, which are dope, and I appreciate that. Just go back, hit that like and subscribe so the algorithms can, you know, send this out to everybody else that's into what we into. Peace.